Imagine a world just a few years from now, where the grand European experiment, the European Union, has ceased to exist. This is not a prediction, but a thought experiment, a journey into a hypothetical future where the ties that bind a continent unravel. We will explore the potential causes that could lead to such a dramatic dissolution, the ripple effects that would cascade across the globe, and the profound impact on individual nations. Who would emerge as winners, and who would face insurmountable challenges in this fractured new reality? The path to 2027 is paved with escalating crises, beginning with a devastating economic downturn. A Eurozone crisis 2.0 grips the continent, far more severe than its predecessor, exposing deep structural flaws and unsustainable debt burdens. Austerity measures, once again imposed, fuel widespread public anger and resentment, particularly in the South. This economic despair provides fertile ground for the relentless rise of nationalism and populism. Movements demanding to take back control gain unprecedented momentum, systematically undermining the authority and legitimacy of EU institutions. National interests are aggressively prioritized over collective European solidarity. A renewed and overwhelming influx of migrants further strains already fragile mechanisms for border control and integration. Anti-immigrant sentiment surges across member states, leading to unilateral border closures and a complete breakdown of shared asylum policies. The humanitarian crisis deepens, and trust between nations evaporates. Internal conflicts and political gridlock become the norm, paralyzing decision-making at every level of the Union. Member states clash openly on critical issues, from budget contributions to foreign policy, fostering an environment of deep institutional distrust. The very idea of a common European purpose seems to vanish. External pressures exacerbate these internal divisions. A weakened commitment from the United States forces Europe to confront its own security vulnerabilities, while the rising influence of China and Russia exploits existing fault lines. The EU, once a formidable global player, begins to appear increasingly irrelevant on the world stage. The unraveling begins with a domino effect, as individual countries, facing insurmountable domestic pressures, announce their departure from the Union. This triggers a catastrophic collapse of the euro as confidence in the single currency evaporates overnight. The meticulously constructed single market, once a cornerstone of European prosperity, rapidly dismantles. In the vacuum left by the EU, new alliances begin to form, driven by shared regional interests or historical ties. The Visegrad Group, for instance, solidifies into a powerful Central European bloc, while the United Kingdom strengthens bilateral ties with former EU members, seeking new trade and security partnerships. The reintroduction of national borders becomes an immediate and stark reality. Customs checks, visa requirements and trade barriers reappear, stifling the free movement of goods, services, capital and people that defined the EU era. Supply chains are disrupted and travel becomes a complex bureaucratic ordeal. The economic fallout is immediate and severe. Widespread instability grips financial markets and national currencies fluctuate wildly, creating immense uncertainty for businesses and consumers alike. The European Central Bank, stripped of its authority, can no longer stabilize the continent's economy, leaving individual nations to fend for themselves. The social and political landscape undergoes a radical transformation. Nationalist parties, once on the fringes, now dominate national parliaments, pushing agendas focused solely on national self-interest. The political center, once the bedrock of European stability, weakens dramatically, leading to increased polarization and social unrest. Despite the chaos, some argue that the dissolution brings certain advantages. National sovereignty and self-determination are fully restored, allowing each nation complete control over its laws, policies and borders. This newfound autonomy fosters a powerful sense of national pride and identity. Economic flexibility and competition are rekindled as nations regain full control over their monetary and fiscal policies. This allows for tailored growth strategies, free from the constraints of a one-size-fits-all European framework, potentially leading to more dynamic and competitive national economies. The burden of EU bureaucracy and regulation is lifted, leading to a significant simplification of regulatory frameworks. This reduction in red tape is hailed by many as a boost for business, innovation, and entrepreneurship, allowing companies to operate with greater agility. The celebration of unique national cultures and identities flourishes without the perceived homogenizing influence of a larger European entity. Each nation can now fully embrace and promote its distinct traditions, languages, and heritage, fostering a deeper sense of cultural diversity across the continent. Stronger bilateral relationships emerge as nations are compelled to forge direct trade, security, and cultural partnerships with each other and with global powers. These tailored agreements are often more efficient and responsive to specific national needs than multilateral EU frameworks. However, the benefits are overshadowed by profound drawbacks. Economic instability and disruption become pervasive as trade barriers and tariffs cripple cross-border commerce. Supply chain issues become chronic, and financial market volatility makes long-term planning almost impossible for businesses. Political instability and fragmentation escalate, with the loss of EU institutional authority leading to increased polarization within and between nations. Border disputes, once managed by Brussels, resurface, threatening regional peace and cooperation. The continent becomes a patchwork of competing interests. Europe's collective international influence is severely diminished. Without a unified voice, individual nations find themselves vulnerable and marginalized on the global stage, struggling to assert their interests against powerful geopolitical actors. The continent's diplomatic weight is drastically reduced. Increased social division and inequality become stark realities. The economic downturn leads to widespread job losses and a surge in poverty, while xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment intensify. The free movement of people, once a right, becomes a distant memory, restricting opportunities and fostering resentment. The erosion of human rights and democratic values is a grave concern. Without the EU as a strong advocate and enforcer of these norms, nationalist parties in power may undermine democratic institutions and civil liberties with impunity. Minority rights and judicial independence face unprecedented threats. In this new world, individual nations must adapt rapidly to survive and thrive. Strengthening bilateral relationships becomes paramount as countries negotiate new trade, security, and cultural ties with global players like the United States, China, and emerging economies. Each nation must carve out its own niche. Investing heavily in innovation and technology is crucial for economic survival. Nations pour resources into research and development, aiming to develop cutting-edge technologies that can provide a competitive edge in a fiercely competitive global market. The race for technological supremacy intensifies. Promoting cultural diplomacy and soft power becomes a key strategy for enhancing international reputation. Nations leverage their unique cultural heritage, arts, and tourism to build goodwill and attract investment, seeking to project an image of stability and vibrancy. Reforming education and skills training systems is essential to equip citizens for the demands of the 21st century economy. Governments focus on vocational training, digital literacy, and critical thinking, preparing their workforces for a rapidly changing global landscape. Finally, adapting to new geopolitical realities requires strategic foresight. Nations must build new alliances, diversify their trade partners, and significantly invest in their own defense capabilities. The era of collective security is over. Self-reliance becomes the new mantra. The future of Europe, post-EU, presents a myriad of potential scenarios. Some envision a return to a continent of independent nation-states, each charting its own course, while others foresee a complex network of regional blocs, cooperating on specific issues but lacking overarching unity. A new, looser form of European cooperation might eventually emerge, born from necessity. Ultimately, this transformed continent would be one of stark contrasts. Some nations, agile and resource-rich, might thrive in this new environment, forging powerful new alliances and achieving unprecedented economic growth. Others, burdened by debt, internal strife, or lack of strategic partners, could struggle immensely, facing prolonged periods of instability and decline. The hypothetical collapse of the European Union in 2027 paints a dramatic and thought-provoking picture of a continent irrevocably changed. It forces us to consider the profound value of the institutions we often take for granted and the delicate balance of cooperation and sovereignty. What are your thoughts on this alternate future? Do you believe such a scenario is plausible or perhaps even inevitable? Share your insights in the comments below. Like this video if you found it engaging, subscribe for more speculative history, and let us know what other what-if scenarios you'd like us to explore next.